Hi, flower friends. Welcome to today's live training on Instagram. I'm so excited to have you joining me today. I would love for you to say hello in the comments today. Let me know where you are joining from and bonus points if you know your growing zone. I've got my computer open here to the side so I can see your comments as we go along today. Good morning from New Zealand. Katie, welcome. I am so envious that you are enjoying dahlias right now. You're probably at the end of your growing season or getting close where we're just getting started here. Where is everyone else joining from? We have Kansas, growing zone 5. We have someone here from England, Haley, Washington State, just north of me. Another person from Washington, Connecticut, growing zone 6B, Colorado 5B. I hope your snow is melting soon. I think there's still snow in Colorado. Central Valley, California, zone 9B. So you have snow, or I'm sorry, not snow. You probably are already started planting your dahlias. I have someone from Woodinville, Washington. Oh, and you love the podcast. Thank you for listening to the Backyard Bouquet. Woodinville, Washington is where my love for dahlias started. So awesome to have you here today. The Netherlands, Portland, my backyard basically, Kentucky, zone 6B, Central Washington, California. Okay, I'll stop reading through those. So awesome to see that we have a global representation on today's call. And Hood River, Elise, hello. Omaha, Nebraska, my husband's family is from there. Wilsonville, oh my goodness, I'm so excited to have so many of you here joining us today. If you do not already know who I am Jennifer of the Flowering Farmhouse and host of the Backyard Bouquet podcast, and also now founder of the Dahlia Patch, our new online learning community. And we are heading into dahlia season if you live in the Northern Hemisphere. And for those of you joining from the Southern Hemisphere, you are probably approaching the end of your dahlia season. Regardless of where you are from, I am so glad to have you here today. Another shout out from Hood River. Hi, Maxwell. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my background. Dahlias are my passion. I always tell people, grow what brings you joy. And for me, it is dahlias that bring me so much joy. And I want to share that joy with you. I want to help you have a successful and thriving year this year. I want to see your gardens blooming with tons of dahlias. So today, I want to help you get set up so that you can have a strong start to your season. I want to help you spend less time dealing with pests and disease. I want you to spend less time trying to find answers to your commonly asked questions. And finally, I want to give you more time to actually enjoy your dahlias and share them with others. So I want to tell you a little bit about my background. I fell in love with dahlias when I was 8 or 9 years old. Up in Woodinville, Washington, my cousins and aunt and uncle, they had this amazing cutting garden on the side of their house, and they would grow dahlias and hydrangeas and cut them and bring them inside and fill their house with bouquets. And as a young child, I said that someday I too wanted to grow dahlias. And I did that when I was an adult and I bought my first house in 2014, my first house in Hood River. I went to Costco and I bought bags of dahlias and I planted 64 dahlia tubers around my garden. Now, I lost a lot of those that first year to disease, pests, rot. I didn't know how to store them. So I had to start over the next year, but I started over. I was determined to grow them. Once I saw those blooms, I was hooked. I don't know if you know the saying about Lay's potato chips. You can't just have one potato chip. For me, that's dahlias. I had one and I was hooked, and now I grow over 2,000 dahlias. So over the years, I have multiplied my stock. I have been growing them since 2014. In 2018, we moved into our current farmhouse where I took my 64 dahlias from our last house. I divided them and I started our flower farm, and I grew 200 dahlias that year. From those 64, I shared the rest and I kept 200 for myself. I learned how to grow 200 dahlias, and then the next year I multiplied them to 800, And now I am up to 2,000 dahlias 6 years into my commercial dahlia career. So dahlias are an expensive investment up front. Each tuber costs anywhere from $8 to $35, $45. So if you learn how to successfully grow them, you can multiply them, you can share your dahlia tubers, you can sell your dahlia tubers. But first you have to get a great start, and that's where I want to start today. So before I dive in, if you can jump into the comments again, let me know, are you a new dahlia grower? Have you been growing for 1 to 3 years? Are you into your dahlia career? Have you been growing for 20 years? Are you a dahlia farmer, a backyard gardener? Let me know what your experience with dahlias is in the comments. So I'm looking here, can't wait to see. New grower, welcome. You're gonna love dahlias. First year, so awesome. I'm so excited that you are joining us today. Another new grower, that is so awesome. I want to help you get a successful start this year. So many new growers, 4 years, 3 years, third year, 2 years, have 70. You're gonna have so many beautiful blooms to enjoy in your house and to share with others. Second year, flower farm, backyard dahlia grower for 15 years. New grower with a Keekley and one of those unicorn dahlias arriving tomorrow. New to dahlias, first season dipping in your toes, backyard gardener, I love it. So we have all experiences here. So as I'm talking today, if you're an experienced dahlia grower and you see a question in the comments, if you wanna hop in and share your knowledge, please do, because the best thing about dahlias is we are an amazing community where we want to help each other grow. I have been in corporate America, and that was where I started my career. It was not a great place for me. I just didn't feel encouraged and inspired. And that was when I found flower farming. And I love that farmers in particular and gardeners love to share their knowledge. And that's what I want to help you do. I want to help you successfully grow dahlias. So before I dive in, I have one more announcement today. And that is, be sure to stick around to the end of this training, because at the end, I am going to choose one person who's been active in the comments today to win 5 dahlia tubers from the Flowering Farmhouse. And then I also have 3 packets of dahlia seeds from our flower farm that I am going to be sending out. And this is brand new. I haven't announced this anywhere else. I'm so excited. We have been working with a local candle maker. If you listen to our podcast, The Backyard Bouquet, you know that I have been dreaming of bottling up scents to be able to have a fragrance line. So on top of someone winning 5 dahlia tubers, 3 packets of seeds, you're also going to win one of our brand new candles that is a collaboration with Wesley and Wade, and this is called The Backyard Bouquet in honor of the podcast. So be sure to be active in the comments today so I can see that you're here and participating. And then stick around to the very end. You do have to be present when I announce the winners. So let's get started. And I do want to tell you, let's see here. I'm just looking at my notes so that I make sure I stay on track, because I am a talker here. So we're going to start with the essentials for growing dahlias. So when you walk away from today's call, you're going to know what you need to do to get started with dahlias this year. You're going to know how to plant your dahlias and what you need to do to set up your season for success. And then we'll talk about some challenges that you might face. And then I want to share briefly with you about the Dahlia Patch community. And then I'm going to open it up for some Q&As. So if you have some questions right now, I'm going to try my best to scroll back through all of them. But there will be a section at the end here where you can ask me your questions, and we'll spend about 10 or 15 minutes answering your pressing dahlia questions. So let's get started. So the first thing you need to know is, if this is your first year, which it is for lots of you here, and let's see here, I'm noticing on the comments some questions not about dahlias, about tulips and other things. If you want to ask those, awesome, but send me a direct message on Instagram so I can answer those, and we'll focus on the dahlias today. So if you are a brand new grower and you want to know, what do I need to get started with growing dahlias? You don't need much. You need an area that has great sunlight. So dahlias do like full sun. You want 6 to 8 hours of sunlight per day. If you are in a hot growing zone, let's say you're somewhere like Texas or even Southern California where it gets really hot, you may need a shade cloth to consider. Dahlias like well-draining soil. So whether you are growing your dahlias in a container, in a raised bed, or in the ground, make sure that your soil is well-draining. So I saw a few of you said that it's raining in Portland. It's raining here in Hood River, Oregon today as well. It's too wet for me to plant my dahlias right now. My soil is saturated, and the last thing you want to do when you have a dahlia tuber like this is put it in the ground with lots of moisture where it's going to rot. So for me, here in Hood River, Oregon, I'm growing zone 7B, 8B. If you haven't already dropped your growing zone in the comments, make sure you share where your growing zone is. And if you're listening today, scroll through the comments so that you can connect with other growers in your growing zone too. That's part of the community, is connecting with others that you can talk to and share the joy with, because nothing's better than sharing your dahlias. So we want our soil to be dry enough that our tubers are not going to rot in the ground. You want your soil to be at least 60 degrees. So right now my soil is hovering around 50 degrees. We were 37 degrees last night. So it's still too cold for me to plant my dahlias. We have a saying here, and you may in your area also, it's usually been when the lilacs are blooming and the snow on our local mountain, not Mount Hood for those of you familiar with the area, but it's called Mount Defiance, which is in the Cascade foothills. When the snow is melted off there, that is when we can put our dahlias in the ground here. So we're a little bit different than the growing zone in Portland. Portlanders, you can plant just a little bit sooner than me, but I would wait till this weather system moves through at least this weekend. It's supposed to be wet. So watch your local weather. You can buy a soil thermometer. If you want a link to that, go ahead and send me a direct message. I don't have that ready for this call. I apologize, but you can buy a soil thermometer and check your soil. I always check it either early morning or late at night, or both, so that I know what the temperature is, so that my dahlias can get a good start. And then let's see, I'm just checking some of these notes here. Heavy clay soil, you definitely want your soil to be dried out, because if your soil is heavy on the clay, your dahlias are going to rot if you put them in while it's all wet. If you do have the opportunity to, a soil test is always helpful if you're growing in the ground, to know what your soil is lacking. People always ask me, well, what fertilizer do I need to include in the ground? And that's a hard one to answer I can't even say that word all of a sudden. It's a hard one to give you a precise answer on, because it depends on what your soil conditions are. Some people say to use bone meal when you're getting started. I don't use bone meal because the critters will dig up my dahlias. And the last thing you want is to spend all of this hard work and then have a critter dig up your dahlia tubers. So I actually just use an organic fertilizer on the above of my ground, and I sprinkle that in, and I let my dahlias get growing. So the final thing you need to get started with dahlias, you might need like a shovel or a hand tool that helps you dig, but the most important thing you need is your dahlias. And so dahlias can be grown from several different methods. The most common method is from a dahlia tuber. So if you're new here, this is what a single dahlia tuber looks like. It kind of looks like a potato. This is the body of the dahlia. Up here is the head, and we've got the neck. And I know it's hard to focus on here, but if you see this little dot, I always say it looks like a pimple. This is called the eye. Your dahlia tuber must have an eye for it to be viable. Without an eye, you don't have anything for the tuber to grow on. So a common mistake that people make when they're dividing their dahlias is they'll cut off the eye or the crown, and then there's nothing to grow the tuber. Depending on where you buy your dahlias, you may get something that looks like this. So this is an undivided clump of tubers. At the end of the growing season, if you plant one of these in the ground, you're going to end up with a clump like this. These are both Cornell bronze tubers. You can see that there's all different sizes and shapes here. All a dahlia needs to be viable. I always say it's got to be bigger than a pencil, and it needs to be bigger than a coin, like a quarter, and it has to have an eye. I know a lot of people, when they get their tubers in the mail, they're concerned about small ones. As long as it's firm, has the eye and the body, and it's not mushy, you can grow a dahlia out of this. So if you go to a big box store, you may end up with a clump of tubers. Usually when you get a clump of tubers, it means that they have been imported. So those of you in the United States who are joining us today, Usually they're imported. I know in other parts of the world, like in England, I saw a few of you are here from England. Usually they're only sold in clumps. So it just depends on where you're buying from. You can also go to your local nursery and you can buy a dahlia that's already sprouted. So if you're new to growing dahlias, you're worried about putting your dahlia tubers in the ground, you can start with a plant. This right here is actually one that was taken as a cutting that I have been growing out. And the nice thing is you can also, as you get it advanced, and we will be doing this in the Dahlia Patch this next year, as we will be growing from cuttings and seedlings. But this is another way that you can grow your dahlias. Or you can pre-sprout a dahlia tuber. If you are in a colder zone, especially growing zones 3, 4, and 5, and even 6, sometimes I even will pre-sprout a few if I need flowers early in the growing season. You can get your dahlia to grow in a pot in a warmer location, and then that way when it's time to plant outside, you can plant this. Dahlia tubers need the soil to be at least 60 degrees. I always say that if you're planting a plant outside, you want it to be when you are planting your tomatoes outside. So your air temperature should also be at least 60 degrees. Dahlias don't like the cold and they don't like the extreme heat. So whether you're in growing zone 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, you can grow dahlias, but you need to know your location. Make sure you have a sunny spot. If you're in a really warm growing zone, then you can also make sure you have some shade. Someone just said, I'm amazed when I plant a tuber the size of my thumb and it grows just like a larger tuber does. Yes, absolutely. Everyone always thinks that bigger tubers are better, but in reality, your dahlias will actually do better with some of the smaller tubers because they don't have to put as much energy into keeping the tuber alive, and they can focus on actually growing the dahlia. So that is the basics of what you need to do to get your what you need to start growing dahlias. When it's time to plant your dahlias, I touched on it briefly a little bit. And let's see here, I've got a few more comments coming in, some more zone 7s. And what's amazing is there are, so for example, we have North Central Arkansas Zone 7 joining us. Your Zone 7 is going to be different than mine. We have similar growing conditions, but our temperatures are going to change at different times. So as a warning, when you see me start planting my tubers, make sure you go back to the information that I just shared with you to make sure that your soil is above 60 degrees. And if you're planting the plant, that your temperatures are above 60 degrees. I did forget to mention one other way you can start dahlias, and that is from seed. So these are some of my seeds that I saved from this last year. You can see they're teeny tiny. And you can also start growing dahlias from seed indoors 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost. The one thing I do want to say is that when you plant a dahlia tuber, you will get an identical plant to what is advertised. So this is a Cornell bronze. It was saved from a Cornell bronze parent, meaning that I will always have a bronze ball dahlia. When you grow from seed, it is fun and it is exciting because it's unknown. But if you are trying to grow for a specific form or shape or size or color, you cannot guarantee that with a dahlia. So I always say it's like Christmas morning. For me, I find so much joy in growing dahlias from seed because it's a surprise, but I never rely on these for bouquets or cut flower sales because I don't know what they're going to turn out to be. Okay, what did someone say? My smallest pre-sprouted tuber has the biggest plant. I believe it. Tubers can put all of their energy into growing the plant when they don't have to worry so much about keeping the tuber alive. Okay, so let's talk about planting your dahlias. We've talked about that you need the soil to be above 60 degrees. You want your outside temperatures to be warmer. Your soil needs to be dry enough that they're not going to rot. And then when it's time to plant, if you're growing in a container, dahlia tubers, I always say, continue to grow. So you can see right here, this clump is about 1 foot wide. So you want, if you're going to put them in a container, the container should be at least 15 inches wide. In the ground, if you're planting multiple dahlias, I like to space mine 12 to 18 inches apart. Some people will also plant theirs up to 24 inches apart. So it depends on multiple things. For me, I plant mine in a row. We have lots of wind. If you don't know of Hood River, Oregon before now, we're the windsurfing capital of the world, which is why I moved here. I moved here to windsurf back in 2006. So we are very windy. I can get gusts up to 40 miles per hour. So I found that by planting my dahlias closer to each other, they have a better support for one another than if I spread them further apart. And by planting them closer together, they grow up in height and I get taller dahlias. Dahlia plants can be anywhere from 3.5 to 6 feet tall. And it depends a lot on the variety. It's all based on the genetics, but when you plant them closer together, they are forced to seek the sunlight and grow a little bit taller, which is great for cut flowers. You're going to get a little bit longer stems out of them. And then as far as planting, you're going to dig your hole. If you want to add any amendments, you can. I know some people like the bone meal. I don't, because I have critters that will just come and dig up my dahlias. Some people put alfalfa sprouts, alfalfa meal, like what you would feed your animals in the farm. I tried that last year. Here's my word of advice. I will never do it again because I have wireworm and garden symphyllans in the Pacific Northwest. If you want to talk about a destructive pest, it is garden symphyllans, and no one in the dahlia industry knew about it. I searched all over the US last year trying to find answers, and I found them through vegetable farmers. That is not a pest you want to deal with, but I know how to deal with them now. And it's something that we will be going over in the Dahlia Patch, so I can help prevent that from other people, but that's a whole nother topic. So I don't use alfalfa sprouts. If you don't have wireworm or garden symphyllans in your soil or other pests that you're worried about eating your dahlias, then the alfalfa is fine. I just found that the wireworm are drawn to the alfalfa. Yes, someone asked, are they in Portland? Yes, they can be. You would know by taking a sample. If you dig into a foot of your soil and you find one, there's a chance that you're probably going to have more. And the wire worms are like these little, they look like a little worm that are about an inch big, and they're hard. And they are actually a click beetle. And they're really hard to eradicate because they live deep down in the soil in the winter for 7 years before becoming a beetle. And every summer they come up to the surface to eat, and then they go back down. But we won't talk about that today. Let's see here. So when it comes time to plant, you're going to dig a hole that's about 4 to 6 inches deep. I like to go 6 inches because what it allows it to do is to grow a stronger base under the soil to support the dahlia, especially with my wind, makes them thicker and stronger, and it gives more space for the tubers to grow. If you plant too close to the surface, you aren't giving your dahlia plant much space for the tubers to grow. Now, you don't want to go deeper than 6 inches because the ground's going to hold a little bit more moisture down there, and it's going to take your tubers that much longer to come up above the surface. So most people would think, like other plants, that you're going to go straight down into the ground. You actually want to lay your dahlias flat. And when you lay them flat like this, you want to make sure that the eye is facing up. So 4 to 6 inches deep, and it's laying horizontally with the eye facing up so it can grow up out of the soil. And then you're going to gently cover it up, the soil up after planting. Now, you don't want to water unless your ground is super dry. Last year, we in the Pacific Northwest here in Hood River, in May, we got unseasonably hot. I planted my dahlias on Mother's Day. We were dry, and then the temperatures went up to 100 degrees, and my dahlia tubers were frying in the ground. So I did have to, I'm sorry, had a little connection there. I hope I didn't lose anyone. Joys of living in a rural area. Sometimes my connection goes out. I'm so sorry. Oh no, and I lost my train of thought. Let me get that back. Oh, the temperatures and watering. So I had to water my dahlias because my ground was so dry. So you can check. You can, if your hand can just go through and it's like sand and there's no moisture, then you might need to water your dahlias. But the general rule of thumb is that you do not want to plant your dahlias until they have come up out of the ground and they have their first set of leaves. So you can see on here, this plant here has 1, 2, 3, and it's growing its 4th set. So this one, once it was like this tall, I could start watering it. But the dahlias have enough nutrients stored inside this tuber to get it up to the first set of leaves without needing to water it. So don't let your tubers rot in the ground. If you see your dahlias flopping over after they've come up, it's often because the tubers are starting to rot or a rodent has started to eat them. And there's things you can do to still save them at that point. Okay, so setting your dahlias up for success this growing season. I just said don't water until the first set of leaves appear, and then don't plant in really wet soil. You want to stake your dahlias. So Dahlias, because they get so tall and they get these big, beautiful blooms, especially dinner plate dahlias, need to be staked so they don't topple over. If you are growing in rows and you're going to be putting trellising around it, or I use baling twine around mine. I don't do that till mine are a little bit bigger. But if you're going to use a tomato cage or a stake, I recommend putting that in the ground before you have buried your dahlia. So when you dig your hole, you put your dahlia tuber in the ground, put that stake right next to it or the cage around it. And what that does is it prevents you from piercing your dahlia later. You don't want to have this beautiful dahlia growing and then add staking in later, and all of a sudden your dahlia starts to wilt because you've punctured the tuber. So dahlias do need staking and support. So if you're growing in rows and you're going to corral them, you can wait. I do put my T-posts in before I ever plant my dahlias. So I do T-posts. My rows on my farm are 36 inches wide, and I have 2 rows of dahlias going down them. So my dahlias are 12 inches apart on the long direction, and then 18 inches apart across from each other. So I've got 2 rows, 18 inches apart with 36 inches wide, and then I have 36-inch wide walking paths so that I can get my wheelbarrow or my wagon down the rows to harvest my flowers. Let's see here, I've got a few questions here. I'm just making sure if there's any questions related to what we're covering at the moment. I will have the Q&A in just a few minutes also. Someone said, I plant my dahlias in a pod and it's tall enough now. Can I take it from the pod and plant it in the ground? That depends on your temperatures and your soil. If you are already past your last frost date and it's above 60 degrees, yes, you can do that. Someone said, repeat that again, please. Can you tell me which item you want me to repeat again? And I will. The spacing. So spacing on my farm, I grow in rows. So on the long way where my rows are that I'm going to walk down, those dahlias are 12 inches apart. So every 12 inches, I am putting a dahlia tuber in the ground. Directly across from them, I'm going 18 inches, and then I'm doing another row that is 12-inch spacing again. And that entire space that I'm planting in is 36 inches wide. So of that 36 inches, there's from the center, I'm going 9 inches each direction and putting my tubers down and then going 12 inches. Does that make sense? Comment in the comments if that does not make sense, and I will try to clarify that. I know sometimes it's hard trying to do a visual on an Instagram live like this, which is one thing that's going to be really great about the Dahlia Patch is it is going to be live from the field. Okay, let's see. Were there any other questions right there? Let's see here. And then, so I talked about the staking. The next thing is when your dahlias come up out of the ground and they are little like this. This is one of my cuttings. You guys, I started breeding dahlias 4 years ago. This right here is, if you've seen it, it's my blush dahlia from 2022. I am taking lots of cuttings. My goal is to release this next year in 2025. So fingers crossed, it does really well. It's an awesome tuber producer. And I have about 50 cuttings right now that I'm going to be planting out of this. Anyways, when dahlias are about this size, they are very susceptible to slugs. Or as they're first coming out of the ground, once you've planted your dahlias, it's going to be about 4 to 6 weeks before you see a shoot coming out of the ground, unless you've pre-sprouted them. When they're coming up, if you don't see them, one of the things that can be a culprit, especially in the Pacific Northwest, is slugs. Slugs love, love, love to devour your dahlias. I have been going in my greenhouse and plucking slugs off every day because it is so wet. They are going from the outside and into my greenhouse to eat them. So you have to be on top of slugs. So what I do is immediately after planting, and I spend a lot of money on this. This is the only chemical I use. Otherwise, I am completely chemical free in our farm. And I go through about 5 or 6 of these a season, is Sluggo Plus. And I sprinkle this down as soon as my dahlias are planted, and then I reapply after the dahlias have come out of the ground. Someone else, Sarah, just said, yes, so many slugs in the Pacific Northwest. They are terrible. Thankfully, we don't have the banana slugs. Anyone on this call have the banana slugs? Yes, the slugs broke me down. Everything else I do is pesticide free. Sluggo Plus is an organic gardening solution. It is a chemical. Someone asked, have you ever tried a basin of beer? I did, but I grow on such a large scale that is not economically feasible, and it doesn't work as well. The Sluggo Plus, it is effective in this plus one, it's safe around your pets. And no, this is not an endorsement. This is just my trial and error over the years. I've tried cans of tuna. I've tried all kinds of things. Sluggo Plus keeps the slugs away. Well, it deters them and cuts down on the amount of them. And then also earwigs. There's nothing worse than harvesting a giant bouquet of dahlias and going to bring it to someone. And as you hand it to them, an earwig falls on the tabletop. I may know from experience. So Sluggo Plus after planting. There are other things you can use also. So like someone did ask about the beer. If you're growing on a small scale, you could do a beer trap, or what else? There are some other chemicals that are not organic, but this is just what I do and has been successful for me in the last decade of growing dahlias. How do I keep the earwigs out? Someone just asked. Milkweed Mama 400. Oh, I love that screen name. Sluggo Plus is how I keep the earwigs out. There's a few other things I do in my integrated pest management system that I will be sharing more in depth, but that is a whole nother subject. And then you want, okay, so we've covered the slugs. We don't want slugs eating our dahlias. They leave a slimy trail. They eat into your petals. They're just not what we want. We want to enjoy our dahlias. We don't want the slugs to enjoy them first. Someone asked, does Hybrix molasses work with slugs? I have not tested that because I've always put the Sluggo Plus down. I'm not sure that it would work with them, but that's a great question. And so the last tip I have for setting up your dahlias for success is that they do need water. So the recommendation is that you give your dahlias 2 to 3 deep waterings per week once they have started growing. Now, where I live, my ground dries out too quickly for that, so I actually water daily. Last year, I switched to pulse watering, which is the idea that you water multiple times a day, but for shorter periods, because I don't need the water going super deep down into the dirt. I need the water staying at that 4 to 6 inches. I had the biggest, most beautiful, healthiest dahlias I've ever grown last year once I switched to the pulse watering. My dahlias were as tall as me. I'm 5'6". I had some that I was like reaching up in the sky to pull down. So they can do really well, but they do need water. So if you live in a drought area, make sure that your dahlias are getting enough water. I have heard of people that live in like Southern California that collect their rain barrels now, so you have some extra water to water your dahlias this summer because they do need water. Someone just asked, I got to catch up on the scroll here on my computer. Jessie, Straight to the Hips Baby said, we use tobacco and water concentrate to keep the slugs away. Awesome tip. I've not tried that one, but I trust Jessie. Jessie is a friend of mine who has a book coming out on cooking and eating with edible flowers. It's a beautiful book coming out this October. Let's see here. Someone said we let our ducks loose and they love them, but only when the dahlias are tall enough. I don't have ducks, but I would love to have ducks someday. That is an awesome pest management strategy for slugs. Someone in New Zealand said, I've never heard of banana slugs. You'll have to look them up. I don't have them here, thankfully, so I can't share a picture. But I did see someone shared a picture of them the other day, and not something that I want to have here in Hood River. Someone else asked, do you have a vole and a rabbit problem? I fortunately don't have a rabbit problem. I have a little bit of a vole problem. My best solution is my neighbors. There are a ton of cats. They catch a lot of the voles. The moles actually are the biggest problem for me. The moles are the ones that dig the tunnels, and then the voles are the ones that come through those tunnels and munch on your dahlias. So there's a couple things that I have done for the voles besides my dog. If you've followed my stories, you know that my dog Rusty, he's like a miniature golden retriever, and he loves to catch moles and will tear up my yard. He has dug out he's dug out plenty of perennials that I don't want to be taken out, and he brings me the moles. So a dog is a great deterrent for that. They don't seem to like that. The other thing I have done is I have sprinkled cayenne pepper into my soil. And I also have sonic devices. So I have sonic devices that make the sounds, and I move those around frequently. And then I use the vole deterrent that you can buy at your local hardwood store. And basically what that is that's like predator urine. So it smells bad. It's a smell thing. So you could even, if you have a way to have your animals go to the bathroom in that area, the urine of a predator keeps them away. So they will be one of those things that are always a constant battle, but those are some things that do make a difference on that. Okay, so that is how to set your dahlias up for success to get started this year. Next, we're going to talk about common dahlia challenges. I'm loving how many comments you guys are asking here. Don't forget, at the very end of this, I am going to draw one lucky person to win 5 dahlia tubers from the Flowering Farmhouse, along with 3 packets of dahlia seeds and our new candle that's never been announced until now. It's a collaboration with Wesley and Wade called the Backyard Bouquet and smells like your summer flower bouquet. Someone just asked me, where was that? Sorry, there's so many scrolls here. Is it too late to plant dahlias? I'm in Romania. It's about 15 Celsius degrees outside, and I bought 20 for a try. I don't know the correlation to 15 degrees Celsius. You would want to convert 60 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius, and that would tell you if it's warm enough or not. So you need your soil at least 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And then ideally, if they're already growing, you want your air temperatures to be above 60 degrees. Nighttime, they can be above 50. You just don't want them dipping into the 30s where you're going to get frost damage on your plants because they are so tender. And then someone else asked, do you suggest rows in the ground over raised beds for dahlias? That is totally a preference on how you are growing. If you are a backyard gardener, you could intermix them in your landscape. That was how I started out a decade ago. I literally plucked them everywhere I possibly could because I wanted dahlias. I love dahlias and I wanted to have bouquets of dahlias all summer long. If you are growing for production, rows make it a lot easier because you can quickly go down the rows. Raised beds sure look beautiful when you have an entire bed full of dahlias. Someone said, I grow my dahlias in grow bags. Would you recommend anything different than when you grow them in the ground? Grow bags dry out really quickly. So you're going to really need to monitor the water and how dry it is because you don't want them to dry out so much that they're dehydrated, but you also don't want to overwater them where they're drowning in the soil. Okay, so let's move on to some of the common dahlia challenges. One of the biggest problems that people face is virus and disease. Dahlias are highly susceptible to both disease and virus. The American Dahlia Society actually said that almost 60% of all dahlias are virused or infected with a disease. That can range from crown gall, which is where tumors can grow on your dahlias, or leafy gall, which is a cauliflower-like bacteria where instead of getting beautiful blooms, you get all of these clusters of sprouts of green without the tuber production or without the flower production. So those are things that are soil-borne. They can transfer to other plants. So a word of caution when you're growing your dahlias is make sure you are sanitizing between plants to help cut down on the spread of disease. Another one is pests. There are going to be tons of different things trying to attack your dahlias. So having an integrated pest management strategy, for me, that involves different beneficials, it involves companion planting, and it involves regular foliar feeds. So other than the Sluggo Plus, I don't put anything else down around my dahlias. I do a weekly foliar feeding, which will go in depth. I'll make that inside the Dahlia Patch with all of you that choose to join us in there, because that is an in-depth topic in of itself. And pest management and beneficials goes well beyond ladybugs. There are so many kinds of beneficials that you can introduce into your garden. And there's also companion planting, different types of companion planting. So it would be hard to go into all of them in depth right now, but there's different kinds of ground cover you can plant. There's things like marigolds that you can put to deter certain plants. And then there's certain plants that you can plant to trap the pests. And then there's other ones that you can plant to attract the beneficials to your garden. And we'll go into depth in all of that inside the Dahlia Patch. And then another challenge for lots of people, because so many of you are new here, I just want to share these with you so that you can start thinking about these things. These are things that should not keep you up at night. Dahlias are meant to be enjoyed and shared, and I want to take away the stress of these things for you. But one of the challenges, if you're in growing zones 7 and below, 7 is kind of borderline, but I have always dug my dahlias. So in the wintertime, so those of you tuning in from New Zealand, if you're approaching the end of your season and you're zone 7 and below, then you are going to want to dig your dahlia tubers at the end of the season, and you need to overwinter them. One of the challenges people face is if your conditions are not right for storage, you can risk rot or them shriveling up if they're dried out. So in the Dahlia Patch, we will be going over how to do this in the wintertime, given your different conditions. But dahlia tubers are very much like a potato. They're a cellar crop, if you think of it that way, when they need to be stored. And then if you dig them up, one of the best parts about digging them up is that you get to divide them. So where this was this little tiny dahlia, all of a sudden, I can look at the eyes here and I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm not even counting beyond. I have, and there's another eye right there, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 10 dahlias. So if I spent $10 on this dahlia, I have 10 times my investment, and now I have $100 worth of tubers. So whether I'm sharing that with my neighbors so they can grow their own dahlia tubers, or I'm donating them to the local Dahlia Society for their sale, or selling them through my storefront, it's a great way to get a good return on your dahlia investment. And then other problems that we all encounter about growing dahlias is information overload. There is so much information about growing dahlias, and so much of it is specific to different pests or diseases, and where do you find your information? So you can really fall into a trap of scrolling Facebook and looking for the right answer with your dahlias, because it's not just black and white. There's a lot of things like the pests and disease and weather. Mother Nature plays a huge role in growing your dahlias. Let me scroll back through here. I'm looking at the comments too as I'm going along, making sure I'm not confusing anyone. Someone just, MLW Creation, said, when I come to Hood River, can I meet you and see your gardens? That is a goal of mine someday. Right now where we are, we're not zoned to have visitors to our farm. Most of you know that we did lose our main growing space this last year. So I am scaling back and really niching down on dahlias this year, which is why I'm doing things like this, so I can help others successfully grow dahlias too. But our goal for the next 2 years is to find a permanent farmland where we can have events and have people such as all of you to our farm, because dahlias are meant to be shared and enjoyed. Let's see here. Someone said, so much info. I like hearing from local flower farmers. Thank you. I really hope that this is helpful for those of you that are here, and I'm so glad you are sticking around. I know this is a lot of your time, and I hope that you are getting some value out of this. So we just talked about a lot of the concerns of growing dahlias. About a year ago, last March actually, I started filming a course all about growing dahlias, and I filmed from last March through October, actually into November when we had our frost last year. And my goal was to come out with a course on everything you need to grow dahlias. But you know what? As I was creating it, I realized that dahlias aren't black and white. There's this gray zone where all of a sudden you have wireworms or garden stymphylans, or there's a nutrient deficiency on your dahlias, and it's information overload, and you're like, where do I go to get this information? And you spend so much time scrolling on social media trying to find that information, that I realized that creating an online membership community would be so much more beneficial than just a course. So I have created, and I'm so excited to share it with you, is the Dahlia Patch. It is an online learning community where it's like a course, but it's interactive. It has a community aspect where you can connect with other like dahlia growers who want to enjoy growing dahlias and share the beauty of dahlias. So that's what the Dahlia Patch is. It is an online learning community where once a month, our first live is actually going to be on May 2nd, which is this Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And for those who are members of the Dahlia Patch, there will be a recording available. So as a member, you'll always be able to watch all recordings of the Dahlia Patch. But it will be a master class where we're going to go even more in depth than we would today, talking about different pest management solutions, really making sure that you get a great start and going over what the Dahlia Patch entails. And then on the third week of every month on the Dahlia Patch, we're going to have an hour-long Q&A session. So you can bring your pertinent, pressing questions, whether there's a pest or nutrient deficiency, and we'll look at those. Lisa said, I'm so excited to join the Dahlia Patch. I'm so excited to have you. This is brand new. I have a founding members offer right now. Prices will be going up on Thursday. I'm going to drop a link here. Let me see if I can do this while I'm talking to you. It's just me. So let's see here. I am sharing a link if you want to check it out after the call. My name is Jennifer Galizia. So I just dropped in the comments, it says Jen Galizia, and then there's a link to our founding member offer. So this is your invitation to join us in the Dahlia Patch, where we are going to be going live not once, but twice every month talking about dahlias. There's going to be a master class. And what's so great about being a founding member is you're going to help shape this membership with me. So if you want to hear about special topics, I'm going to be trying to invite in guests that are specialists in those areas to share with us about their knowledge. So whether it's nutrient deficiencies or bringing in someone from a pest management company like a beneficial insect place like Nature's Good Guys or Arbico Organics, we're going to be going over all of that. And it's going to be walking through, anyone can join. So if you're asking, is this for me? It's for beginners. It's for those that are having some questions or those that just really love growing dahlias and want a community. We're going to be going live each month. Like I said, we're going to have our question and answers. And then we're also going to be walking through my farm. So every week I'm going to take you live with inside scoops of what I'm dealing with, what I'm doing, so you can follow along and see exactly what I'm doing with my inside tips and tricks that I'm not sharing on social media. Empty Nester 2 Homesteader said it's so excited for this. Thank you. Great idea. Yes, I'm so glad you guys like the idea. This is something that's been over a year in the works, so I'm really, really excited to invite you to it. If you want to grow dahlias this year, you want to learn how to grow more abundant, healthy dahlias that you can enjoy and bring into your house and share with others, then the Dahlia Patch is for you. Sorry, I've been packing dahlias and I've got vermiculite, I think, in my throat. So let me just look here. This is your invitation to join me in the Dahlia Patch, where I'm going to be sharing weekly tips and tricks of exactly what I'm doing. And this is a community. So you're going to get to interact with other people that are also interested in growing dahlias and sharing the joy and beauty that they bring. So I'm going to look at some of these questions, and then we're going to open up the Q&A session here, because I know that is why so many of you have stuck around, because you would like to ask these questions. So I'm seeing Poppy's Flower Farm, Pacific Northwest. I'm so sorry, my throat is going dry. How can new growers compete when desirable tubers? Oh, I'm so sorry. My apologies. Someone said, how can new growers compete when desirable tubers are up to $30 each? I am so sorry. Wow. I'm glad I've got my water here. Are you talking about selling tubers or trying to get going? Unicorn dahlias are $30 and up. Some of them are $25. But if you are growing and wanting to get started, you don't have to spend that much money on dahlias. Buy some of the more affordable, tried and true ones that you're going to get tons of blooms out of. A lot of those unicorns are unicorns because they don't store well or they don't produce a lot of blooms. So start with the ones that are tried and true. And in the Dahlia Patch, I'll be sharing different PDFs each month with you. So some of those will be my favorite dahlias for wedding flowers, my favorite flowers to grow with dahlias. Some of them will be tried and true varieties to get lots of blooms. So I hope that answers that question. Any tips for storing in the winter? When you join as a founding member right now of the Dahlia Patch, with the annual membership, you actually get my mini course that came out last year, which is all about storing and dividing tubers. My biggest advice is think of them like a potato, and how would you store a potato in a cellar? So you need conditions that are below 50 degrees and not freezing. Someone asked, how do you recommend breeding the more petaled flowers like dinner plate dahlias? If you want to breed dinner plate dahlias, then you want to plant dinner plate dahlias next to other dinner plate dahlias to try and help the bees out with breeding those. I've got a few varieties. I've got, I think, 4 or 5 dinner plates that I'm growing out for a second year this year that I'm real excited about. Let's see here. Someone said, would love a class eventually on how to breed. Yes, so when you come along with me and the Dahlia Patch, let's see here. So this summer, so starting in about August is when I start saving my seeds. So I'll be sharing how I'm saving my seeds and what I'm personally doing. And then we'll have a grow along next winter, about 4 to 6 weeks before our last frost date, on starting our dahlias from seed. Someone else said, I overwintered 25 last year here in 6B. Should I divide them after this fall frost or try it again? So you don't have to divide your tubers, but the longer you let them go, the clumps are going to get bigger and bigger and harder to divide. And the mother tuber starts to break down because it puts all of its energy into growing the plant and new tubers. So you can divide in the fall or in the spring. In the spring, when your tubers are waking up, the eyes are easier to see. In the fall, it's a little bit harder. But again, in the Dahlia Patch, we'll do a grow along and divide tubers together. Or I'll show you everything from a very simple tuber dividing a clump to a very complex clump that needs special tools to divide. Okay, I'm scrolling through these questions. I'm going to do my best to get to some of these here. Someone said, I paid $35 shipping for a Kelgley Ann and it came with a huge gouge. Oh no. It is really disheartening when you pay a lot of money for a tuber and it's not viable. I'm sorry to hear that. Let's see here. Someone said, are you going to drop the website again? Yes, I will reshare that because I know there's a lot of comments and questions in here. So I just reshared that link for those that are interested in checking out the Dahlia Patch. Tyler said, I'm bringing my tubers out of storage to plant this weekend and noticing some have 3 or 4 inch sprouts. Worried the plant will be weak if I let them grow on. Should I snip them back before planting? If the sprouts are strong and you feel like they're tall enough that you can put them right up to the surface or even straight up without breaking them when you cover them back with soil, you can leave them on. Or what you can do is you can break the tuber off right on the crown, and what will happen is another 3 to 5 eyes will sprout. So you'll have a new sprout coming up in several weeks that will come out of the ground. So not a problem if you cut those off. Amanda said, pulse watering. I would love to try this. How long would you water and how many times a day for a 300 to 400 square foot garden? That is a tough question to answer because it depends on how much water is coming out. So you're really going to have to do a little bit of experimenting if you want to try pulse watering. I run my irrigation, so I have irrigation lines in the ground. Some of them are 4-inch spacing. I have some that are 6-inch and some that are 12 based on when I bought them in the last 6 years. So depending on the spacing, I have to run them for different amounts of time. So like the 4-inch ones, it is the 4-inch ones which allow more water to come out. I have to water about 5 to 10 minutes 3 times a day, where the 12-inch, I'm sorry, my internet just cut out there again. I hope I didn't lose anyone. With the further apart spaced cuttings, I have to water for about 15 to 20 minutes, 2 to 3 times a day. And then I'm constantly monitoring the soil because later in the season, your dahlias don't need as much either as the soil's holding more moisture in when it starts to cool down. Okay, I'm scrolling through these. Someone asked me, what is my education? Is it in the field of horticulture? I actually grew up with a mom that had a beautiful garden. She could have been a master gardener. And then I fell in love with flowers and I became self-taught. I grew my own flowers with my own garden until 2018 when I enrolled in Florette's online flower farming workshop. I took her workshop and I have since attended many webinars through Oregon State University, the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. I'm a member there. So I've continued my education for the last 6 years as I continue to learn, attending different conferences and working with industry professionals, specifically through Oregon State University, who does a lot of research with dahlias. Any advice on dipping your toes into starting a flower business? I would say if you want to start a flower business, and I'm assuming that's a cut flower farm, that you want to start small with a manageable amount, and don't set any expectations your first year. You want to focus on learning how to really grow those. Growing for cut flowers is very different than landscape. So you're going to be learning how to maximize your production. And let's see here, that's a loaded question too. So I'm trying to answer that as best as I can. And learning that first year, you can really learn what your customers want or who your customer base is going to be, and then learning what brings you joy. So for me, it's dahlias. I will always grow dahlias. I can't imagine not having them in my house. But for you, it might be lisianthus, or it might be sunflowers or zinnias. So really finding what you enjoy growing, because what you enjoy growing is what you're going to get really good at growing. Someone asked me, what do you use for staking? I use T-posts because I grow in rows. So I space my T-posts every 8 feet, and then I corral with baling twine. Someone said, great, thank you. You're so welcome. Someone asked me, can I put a link in my bio? Yes, the link is in my bio. When you click on my bio, it's the very first drop down. And if it's not, I'm sorry, the link's not working for some of you in here. If you send me a direct message after this call, I will send you the link, and I'd love to chat with you if you have any further questions about the Dahlia Patch. Someone said, I'm worried about the wind in my area in Canada. We get up to 60-kilometer winds. How is the wind where you live? You said it was bad. Aside from corralling in the rows, is there anything you can recommend? Calcium. Krista, I actually do use calcium in my foliar spray. It's part of my foliar spray, and it helps strengthen the stems. But I think our strongest winds were 50-mile-hour gusts last year. So I did use Hortanova netting, which I won't use again because I did not like harvesting through it. But that is one thing that can help you with high winds. Mama Lana's Flowers said, do you recommend drip tape or overhead water? Sorry if I missed you answering. Where I live, overhead watering does not seem to work because there's too much moisture and I tend to get powdery mildew. So I like drip irrigation. And then another person said, I'm sorry, I can't, or for some reason I can't click on the link. Nikki, I'm sorry that the link's not working for you. Send me a direct message and I will get you that link. And you can also visit the link in my bio for the link to the Dahlia Patch. I'd love to have you join. Mama Lana's Flowers also asked, how many cuttings would you take per tuber? If you're going to plant that tuber out, I don't take any more than 7 or 8 because you really start to stress the plant out. If you're not planning to plant the tuber and you're just going to take the cuttings, so we're talking about these cuttings here where I'm multiplying my stock. I'm actually doing leaf cuttings this year, so I'm getting probably 20 to 30 cuttings per plant, so a lot more. Someone also asked, along with Tyler's question, is it okay to bury leafy growth when planting? So the leafy growth is this that you're referring to. I would not bury the leaves, but you could cut the leaves off and leave the nodes. And if you plant any of the nodes underground, what's going to happen is that's going to actually allow more dahlia tubers to grow. Great question. Someone asked about, Amanda said, fertilization. I've seen some growers say nitrogen isn't good for dahlias. Some say it's outdated. Do you have an opinion? My opinion is that it really depends on your soil. If your soil is lacking nitrogen, then your dahlias are going to need nitrogen. If you have too much nitrogen in your soil, then you don't want to add nitrogen. So that's where it really goes back to the soil test. Jazzy says, I scrolled through one here. I'll go back to that one as I'm scrolling. I think I've got 2 different scrolls going here on my computer and the phone. And I know we're running out. I'm going to take a couple more questions. And then if you have additional questions, I invite you to join me in the Dahlia Patch, or you can send me a direct message on Instagram. Someone said, Maggie asks, if heat dome is forecast, would you cover them with a shade cloth or would you cut them back so they need less water? I've never tried cutting mine back when there's a heat wave. I don't want to do anything that's going to stress them. If you're able to provide a shade, that's great. I've always just upped my watering, and actually one year when it was 118 degrees, I hosed them down. So you want to be careful not to burn them, but in the late evening after the sun wasn't shining directly on them, I would hose them down. Someone asked thoughts on netting that isn't plastic. I'm trying to think, like, are you thinking about like the nylon plastic? One of the things you have to be careful with netting is